well, Daniel. Nice to be with you again.
All right, we are back, and I got to get things out of the way here and get you back online. There you are, man. It's good to have you back, man. We are in 2021.
We made it, Daniel. We
They
made
said
it.
now they
The
said,
world didn't blow up.
well, there you go. They said we wouldn't make it.
Well, maybe it's cowboy logic, mate, prevailed in the end, Daniel. Maybe everyone thought we were going to get to the finish line before we got there. And
Yeah.
now we've got a few other things on our hands. There's a few issues you've got to juggle right there in America, Daniel. But off the bat, mate, I wanted to ask you about cowboy logic. Can you utilize cowboy logic and tell me about Kamala Harris and how she transformed from an Indian heritage American to an African American, please? Is that cowboy logic?
That's a good example of cowboy logic. It's kind of like the king has no clothes. We all over here in America, we're all saying, yes, you are African American. We don't know about your history. We don't really know that you're an Indian. We don't really know you was in Canada and that you never celebrated Kwanzaa because you have a picture of you when you was a little girl celebrating Christmas. But then you said you were celebrating Kwanzaa before it was even invented. So, but we don't know that, Kamala. So yes, you are African American. Yes, you have filled that checkbox. Absolutely.
But then I saw a video of Kamala Harris proudly celebrating her Jewish rituals. She doesn't celebrate Christmas. She doesn't celebrate Kwanzaa. She has Jewish ceremonies, Daniel. So if you can pull up that footage at some stage, I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised. Let's also talk about cowboy logic. Explain to me how Elizabeth Warren was Native American when her grandma wrote a story in some book. What was that book called, Daniel? Chop Pow Wow or something or other?
Wow. I don't know about that one.
Well, there was an old cookbook that Elizabeth Warren always referred to, and she said because her grandmammy wrote recipes in that Native American cookbook, that's how she was able to attribute Native American heritage to herself. Um, Pocahontas isn't real, is she, Daniel?
Nah, she's not real. Most of them aren't. We got Joe Biden. He cured cancer, and so he's going to cure COVID when he gets in. I suppose all these things that he didn't want to do for 45 years. Somehow he's going to be able to do it. I don't know, but there's a lot of fraud out there. There's people claiming they were in the military and they weren't. So a lot. Then there's others that claiming there was a dossier that was that Trump was doing stuff in. So lies and frauds really just permeate the entire United States ruling class, Ben.
I mentioned it to you last time, Daniel. In your country is much larger than the country you just live in. What happens in your nation reverberates around the world, and normal practices in your nation become adopted as normal practices around the world. Right now, your country is seemingly a vehicle and it's hurtling towards the edge. Daniel, can you explain to me what's going to happen on January the 6th? Right now, you have a man, his name is Donald Trump. He's the president of the United States. And everything is legally binding for him still to be the president of the United States until he vacates on January the 20th. But what I don't understand is the media seems intent on telling everyone that Donald Trump is no longer the president and Joe Biden is the president. So how has that been in American over there? And is that very conflicting for you to constantly see this message portrayed when obviously it's not accurate?
Right. It's about as accurate as when they say there's not a shred of voter fraud. And it's and voter fraud here. This is part of the lies that we are immersed in. I mean, it surrounds us. It's coming at us 24 hours a day. There's no wonder people think that to this day, half of America thinks that Donald Trump went out and got little kids and put them in cages. But the reality was Obama had those cages built, and it was his people put them in there. So. And then there's this hands up, don't shoot fraud. People to this day, it's in the culture. It doesn't take much to put lies like that in to impregnate them into the gullible minds of an uneducated population that America has created because of the left has been in control. So the fact that they're saying Biden is a president elect or going to be president and that Trump lost and there's not a shred, we're all supposed to say, oh yeah, that's right, because they told me. But unfortunately, half the population have believed that. But no matter, like I said, in the kind of in the running points, even though we got Facebook out there that just deleted a Facebook page that for people going to DC to Trump's rally January 6th. They deleted it with 1.7 million followers to that. It's too bad. Those 1.7 million people, they don't use Facebook as their primary feed of source and information. We've all got ways that more and more people are going around these controllers. So there is some hope out there.
Yeah, it's amazing, Daniel. Back in the day when they had the book burning exercises publicly, they didn't always ban bad books. A lot of the time, most of the books that were burned were very good books. They were the books that helped people, that helped inspire people, that awoke people. And those books had to be eliminated because they could equip people with their own personal liberties. They could equip people with their own thought processes, and they could equip people with their own understanding for situations and critical minds. By silencing, as they do, and wiping out 1.7 million people from one particular group, and that's replicated across hundreds of different groups on Facebook and all social media platforms, as we know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, Daniel, that's so toxic and that's so corrosive. That's exactly the same. I'd say it's worse than burning books. It's the equivalent of taking that person and burning them at the stake, because you're making them disappear. Mm-hmm. You're saying they're worthless and they're of no value. They have nothing to contribute. And the worst thing about that is, in those cases, those people who are part of those groups, they care about their nations the deepest out of most people. They're the ones actually attuned to what's going on. So I see that as a way to incite those people to go mad, Daniel. You know, when you take everything away from people that have already lost everything and they've got nothing left to lose, mm-hmm. inevitably they'll lose it. Mm-hmm. And they have victims that are objects of their justified outrage, because people are willfully making these decisions. And the people that are willfully making the decisions, not in all cases, but in most cases, are doing it spitefully. They're doing it to be a part of a particular ideology. Mm-hmm. And, mate, like I said last time, this is a reckoning, Daniel. You can't push everyone onto Parler, because then all they'll do is shut down Parler. Mm-hmm. Dan Bordino, who runs Parler, he's already spoken at length about they just do not have the capital to be able to provide the infrastructure for an en masse 10 million people gravitating towards it if they're all eliminated on Twitter. Twitter's supposedly going to change their rules on January the 21st. Mm-hmm. And isn't that interesting? Because that coincides with the supposed inauguration mm-hmm. of Joe Biden, mm-hmm. which is going to be a virtual inauguration. Speak to me about and tell me how you feel about a virtual inauguration. A president who's too much of a pussy to get up there and stand before the people in front of the marvelous and magnificent buildings that were built centuries ago for such a grand occasion, Daniel. Yeah. This is a joke, mate, because he's afraid of a cop. Are you mm-hmm. kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And really only men, I would say, alpha males, leaders, true leaders, those capable of making intelligent decisions and making the good calls to advance this country and protect this country should ever get near those edifices in DC. But now they're controlled anyway by a bunch of freaking kooks, shutting down the museums and various things like that. But it kind of goes along with his little circle deal that he did, when but he knew there was going to be so much cheating. I mean, he said it right out. We've got the biggest fraud organization in the history of America already running. He was absolutely correct. Then he's standing in his little circle. So really it's apropos for him to be in some little weasel looking thing. Look, there's this big dramatic New Year's Eve deal where him and Dr. Jill Biden, I don't know if she's a doctor, maybe she's a proctologist. I don't know what she does over there. I think all she is she went to school somewhere, was taught in a school somewhere. I don't know. But, and maybe she snorts with, does some crack with the hunter. I don't know. But, they're going to open up a noisemaker. And this is going to symbolize them, man, because Obama couldn't do anything for 8 years. He didn't fix anything. He didn't make America better. He just made everything worse. And this is going to be how Biden is, because he's done, because they're locked. They're locked in an ideology that does not allow America to succeed. Their idea of success is to tear down America. The more they tear it down, the more successful they feel. But so they're going to pop this noisemaker and they twist it, and they're on live TV, man. Oh, it's a grand occasion. Whee! They're going to celebrate. Nothing. The thing doesn't work. And that right there, of course, you know what? Here's what Trump would do. He would blast an unbelievable display of fireworks that would spell out Trump, which is exactly what he did. That's Trump. That's a leader. But this little weasel, skinny looking, android looking, Skeletor, crypt keeper guy, they pull that. They can't even open a noisemaker without some kind of failure. He can't make a sentence without some kind of failure. And they can't have a policy without failure. That's all they are, is just failure. How you like that one?
Daniel, I love it because you're painting a stark reality, but that reality is true. But it's only true for half of the people, and that half wishes to implement that reality against what is common reality for yourself now. Donald Trump is the man with a vision, and Donald Trump has been the man with a plan. And he's had that plan implemented and been trying to roll it out. And people such as yourself and other people, regardless if they really like Donald Trump the man, the grander plan is really what they're supportive of. And anyone that comes on board now and tries to oppose that, and it's actually the entirety of the Democrat Party, and somebody like Joe Biden, who, like you say, is a skeleton, and he gets up there and he stands there and he doesn't really know what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
He's reading a teleprompter. They speed it up. They slow it down. He says the wrong things frequently.
Mm-hmm.
His wife, yes, she's holding it. She's holding his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just quickly address that. She's an educated woman. She's an educator. Okay, so let's give her dues. She understands her husband isn't the man fit firing the way he was when he was 55 years of age, let alone 40. She also knows he's had a long quest to become something very important, and he wants to be something better than vice president and senator, because he's stuck with it this whole time when he could have walked away. This is about Joe Biden's seething determination to get his name on the official letterhead. For some reason, he thinks when he goes there, it makes everything better. Maybe he thinks he can pardon all of his son's crimes. Maybe he thinks at that level, nothing will ever be able to come back to him about Hunter Biden going forward. But the point being, Jill Biden, as an educated woman, knows her husband isn't the best man for the job, Daniel. Mm-hmm. There is no conceivable way she knows he's the best man for the job. She actually has to know and understand that it's a detriment to his health and well-being to keep him so active when he should be relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I have to ask, well, what's her stake in the game? Is she also completely crazy, hell-bent on a personal quest to be the treasured first lady, to be on a pinnacle, to do it her way, to have her way, the red carpet rolled out for her? Because I believe in her teaching career, she hasn't been the most esteemed academic and lecturer at Harvard or Yale. She's taught at local community colleges for a long time. The plaques on those walls, they don't count the same as a plaque on the entrance to a grand hall at Harvard, Daniel. So Dr. Jill Biden wants some libraries named after her. And presently, it can't be done. But if she becomes First Lady, you betcha she'll do it. So I think there's a mindset and a pathology with all of these people where it's completely selfish and it's to the detriment of your nation and then by extension, the wider world. Mm-hmm. And that's abominable.
Well, I guarantee you, she's going to make the cover of all kinds of magazines. So, after we have 4 years of the most eloquent first lady ever to be in that office, who's never said
they hate her. Daniel, they hate Melania.
They hate her
Trump.
because she's successful and she's smart. She's an immigrant. She's everything they're not. And I don't know. There's some kind of weird thing about liberal Democrat women, man. They're just about the ugliest things there is out there. But really, it's because their spirits are so ugly. That's, you can take an ugly person if they got a good, physically ugly. If they got a good spirit, you don't even see that. But if they don't, it magnifies that. Then you got Pelosi, you've got Maxine Waters, you've got that Lightfoot up there in Chicago. These things that he's like, get out of here, man. So you said an interesting point, and this is something I want to think about because I never thought about that. And that is, you're saying that something about Joe Biden, that if he gets to that presidency, that the crimes that he has committed, and we all know that he's committed those crimes, and the FBI has been hiding them, and they're on that laptop, but they're also in plain view when he said to the Ukrainians, we're not giving you the $1 billion unless you fire the prosecutor looking into my son. Plain as day. There's no getting around that. But somehow that's another one of those kings haven't got. That's another one of those. It's like Kamala Harris is African American, and it's like Pocahontas. You know, she's an Indian. Like that. Remember that Debbie Disdall or Desdall, whoever she was an African American in college, teaching African American college courses for 10 years before it figured out she was white. And so these all these things are coming at us. They're going to say, hey, we need to tear the wall down because we look bad and we don't really need it. They're just going to tell us this stuff like it's true. But it's interesting you said that about Joe Biden, that somehow in his heart, because there might be some kind of, the Bible says that if you commit a crime, basically, if you're evil, there's something like it's called a splinter that goes into your mind that lets you know that you have done wrong. And he must know that he has done wrong, that he has betrayed his country. But yet, if he gets to the presidency, he may feel sort of like some vindication that you're suggesting. And maybe that's all he wants to do, just get in there, get his name in the lights. Feels like, hey, the gods must be smiling on me because I'm here. And, and my cheating and scandals that got me here, those are all part of how I got here. So right on. So that's an interesting point you brought up.
Yeah, Daniel, actually thinking about it just a little bit more as you're speaking about that, an image of a mafia. And I think there's a movie, it's called The Departed, and it had Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon and Jack Nicholson, and it was about the Irish mob in Boston, and they tried to insert through a generation a young man, and he could become their insider, and then he could protect the mob going forward, and they had an in-bed operator, so to speak. And I thought, well, Joe Biden, he's been involved in the inner sanctum of your government for more than a decade, longer than I've been alive on the planet. And that means he's made connections. And in those early elections for those first 12 years, he cut a lot of deals. He was a young up-and-comer. He was doing his thing. He used to make up stories about being places and doing things and making speeches. And he also said he was the top of his class at university for certain things. And that actually was incorrect, factually incorrect. And then I believe at some stage he also ran for president. And this was maybe when I was a little boy. And then during the course of him running for president, he actually had to withdraw from the candidacy because it was proven that he'd done things which were so untoward that there was no way with a straight face he could run.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, he was put back into the system. So what I'm getting to is he's either a mafia apparatchik or he actually believes, like his son and what the emails say. He believes he's the Don. He's the Godfather. He's the big guy. The big guy gets 10%. Well, of course the big guy gets 10%, man. This is what's going down. So it's so blatantly obvious then the reason why Joe Biden is staying there, still remaining there with this sole quest to do it, is because he does want to expunge all of these affiliates and associations with this total criminal underclass. And I think, in a way, the deep state knows, hey, listen, we'll keep the Godfather in control because he's ready to kick the bucket. And we don't have to worry about a mutiny because look at his son. His son isn't trying to kill his dad like what would have been done previously, or another son to kill their dad so they could take the power. Because Hunter Biden is too inept. He'd rather be snorting crack, like you say, off the backsides of hookers on Jamaican beaches. And, who blames him? If you can do it, maybe so. It might be a good life for a while, but it's very detrimental and destructive to one's personal health. So, Joe Biden, man, he's the mafia boss, and they know they don't have to whack him now. They'll let him in there. And then Kamala, as his little consigliere, she's ready to do whatever needs to be done. And therefore, it tells me, well, who are the fighting families? Biden thinks he's in control of a family, but he's not. The Clintons have got a family, and I think the Obamas have got a family as well, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm sure he's out there snorting coke and doing a bunch of Jamaican bitches. I'm sure about that. All right, we got a question coming in for it from Rose. It says, Australian Ben, how's the lockdown in Australia from the alleged COVID-19 pandemic?
It's totally outrageous, but from the onset, let me say this. I personally try to comply with everything, but I haven't been required in the region I live in Australia, in the north of Australia, the state of Queensland. we're not required to take vaccinations and wear masks and adhere to all these draconian restrictions. I haven't been subjugated to quarantine and the inability to travel and see loved ones, etc. But other people in other states, Victoria and Sydney, or Victoria, which is Melbourne, and New South Wales, which is Sydney, and also Western Australia, which is capital city is Perth, they've been under significant lockdowns and restrictions. Now, that's been eased up somewhat because everyone was told we got over the hurdle, we closed the gap, we did everything right, staying apart actually kept us together, we were going to build back better, all these things were going to happen. And borders were gradually opened. Lots of Australians in the last few weeks have been making obvious travel plans and going back and forward, and most people wanted to go interstate because they've been prevented from seeing family for the majority of the year. Mm-hmm. Sadly, a couple of days before Christmas, we had a few sporadic cases, maybe to the tune of half a dozen or a dozen, which popped up in a region approximately 50 kilometres out of Sydney. We were able to identify that outbreak pretty quickly. We were able to get on top of it, isolate those people. But just as a preventative measure, Daniel, because of course this is all prevention, because we've got to do everything to save lives, and the best way to save lives is to force people not to go anywhere and do anything. They decided to close the borders once again. And I had some friends, they hopped on a plane from Melbourne to go to Perth 4 days ago. They were planning on being there for 2 weeks. They came back 2 days ago because the government said if you're not out of here by 11:59 p.m. this evening, you're going to be subject to lockdown and you'll have to go into a forced quarantine for 2 weeks. And the government forces individuals to pay it. It's a measure that we're expected to take if we wish to travel, if we wish to do things. We have to go into this quarantine, not in every single case, but in many cases now, to prove that we're A-OK, and that's about $3,000, which is, $2,500 American.
Peter from Australia in the live chat said that Melbourne's been in a lockdown for 12 months. I just don't know. There's more to it, and we all know in the normal world that it's not about lockdowns. It's about getting the resetting the planet. Let's get to another question from, obviously these names are going to be familiar to you because you've been in the live chat so many times as well. From Azur again, what's your opinion of the election being contested on the 6th? If so, the probable outcome. And that is something that we wanted to get to tonight with you, Australian Ben. What we know is there's been a number now of senators that have joined who will not vote for the electors. And it started with one that was Josh Hawley, and they went after him. But now there's multiple ones, including, I think it's being headed by Ted Cruz and Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee. And now there are already, I think, maybe 100 representatives, GOP representatives. So they have the fulfillment of our Constitution, which says if there is an objection, then they have to go to a vote situation where Vice President Mike Pence will oversee. Now, Ted Cruz and the group that has assembled to object to the electors have put a demand on that, and that is if they agree to a emergency 10-day audit of the election, then they'll vote for the electors. Now, so our question is, do we think they will go with that demands or try to brush them aside and say we're not even going to pay attention to you?
Daniel, it's an outrageous proposition simply because what they did, the theft was so blatantly obvious. And you touched on it upon earlier, and it's been spoken at length by many other people, that halfway through the evening, they shut it down and they said, go to sleep, and everyone woke up and then Trump had won. But I was almost lucky because I didn't have to go to sleep because of the time difference. And I watched it all unfold, Daniel. And all I could think about, do you know what? I actually had a conversation with you on Halloween. It was the Halloween show, which was just before the election. Mm-hmm. And someone asked a question. I can't recall who, but it was a lovely person. Either way, they said, what's going to happen when we go to the election? What will they do? Who will accept what? And I said to you, Donald Trump won't lose the election. The Democrats will simply refuse to accept that Donald Trump has won the election. And it's actually happened. And it wasn't that I was prophetic in it. I just recall Hillary Clinton saying clearly weeks before, under no circumstances will you concede. And I recall Nancy Pelosi in 2015 saying constantly, under no circumstances will Donald Trump be president of the United States. This is nonsense. He's not going to be president of the United States. So the reality of the situation is, this is a real thing. It's actually been happening now. It throws us into what's actually going to happen now. People are expecting arrests for the deep state. There's three. Let me put it like this: there's three Americas and three realities that are all rolling together at once right now. One of those realities is the one according to the mainstream media and Joe Biden and the deep state, that Donald Trump's a bad guy. They're going to get rid of him. He's going to leave and vacate. And then they're going to prosecute him. And he's willingly going to accept the prosecutions, and all the people that support him are going to get prosecuted, and they're all going to be banished from America. Their assets are going to be stripped, and they'll be erased from the pages of history because they had the wrong thoughts and they weren't capable of being re-educated. And maybe they upset too many people. So that's one legitimate reality. The other legitimate reality is MAGA and everything that's happening with Make America Great. And the people who are attached to Donald Trump at the hip, who are rusted on because he's the champion of the idea. He's not Christ, Daniel. He's not God. He's the man saying, I'm standing up for these things. And those people that are a part of MAGA, that's the Bible Belt, Daniel. That's evangelical Christian America. They're not going anywhere. They've been there doing their thing in your country since the founding. You know, those people are true believers. They're fierce constitutionalists. And even if there's only 1% of your population that are those people, they're ardent subscribers to the Second Amendment. And they fully believe that Trump needs to do something. So that's the second reality. And then the third reality is people that are just watching. They maybe not have a dog in the fight either way. They prefer it to be Trump because they understand Biden's going to send them down this terrible path and ruin America as founded and replace it with something else which they think satisfies and ticks all the boxes of political correctness. And then once they establish that nation and it becomes the hub of the United Nations, they can then export that culture to us, the rest of the world. We're already seeing the imposition of political correctness and those things which happen in your country here. And they also then happen and spawn in England and in New Zealand and in Canada. So this is a wider scope of what's going on. So for the people in that third reality that are watching, desperately hoping for something, I'm asking, okay, if Donald Trump's doing something on January the 6th, and it's called the Stop the Steal rally, and he's been calling for people very boisterously, come and attend, Americans, come, we're going to save our country. Sidney Powell and other people, and notably Sidney Powell, over 1 million people on Twitter, she gets eliminated in Facebook and everything as well. She says it's because she has 100% documented fact that this was stolen, that Donald Trump is the rightful president. Donald Trump's calling for 1 million people to get there. Maybe there won't be 1 million people to get there, Daniel. But the simple fact is, Google whistleblower, Zach Voorhees, he's going to be there. Alex Jones is going to be there. Nick J. Fuentes is going to be there. General Flynn is going to be there. It's going to be on the steps next to the Senate building. Donald Trump's going to make a speech, and Oath Keepers are going to be there. Steve Quayle's entire Montana Mountain Men Patriot crew, they're all going to be there. John B. Wells and all his crew are going to be there. You're going to send the cowboys from Indianapolis, and they're going to take all the bees and feed everyone honey, Daniel. The point is, they're going there with a serious belief that this is a real thing. This is our reality. The mainstream media views that reality as not real, as you guys are just holding on for something which is fake. Donald Trump's out of there. But no. You guys want to turn this on their head, and you want to see arrests. You want to see people dragged out. And Don Lemon shouldn't be on CNN anymore every night spewing this horrible stuff. If he wants a show of his own in the land of free speech, cool. But he can't be on a national network being saying these things, because there should be some limits to what the mainstream media can and can't say about the legitimacy of your government and your president. So January the 6th, Daniel, what do you think is going to happen, and what are you actually looking forward to?
Well, I would say in that order, I'm a minimalist, and that is that there will be a substantial number of people there, and there will be a lot of speeches. But the people that are going there are, by and large, constitutionalists. They're not going to break the law. They're not going to defecate on the streets like Antifa would. They're not going to, they're not going to take dumps out everywhere. They're not going to burn buildings down. They're going to obey the traffic laws, and then at the end of the day, they're going to go home. But I think they'll make a statement, and of course, it won't be advertised anywhere. The numbers will be lowered, no matter if it is suggested, and they will key in on the Proud Boys. I guarantee you, CNN and their crew and all these other news media outlets are going to be looking for a Proud Boy somewhere in there, because that's their key to saying they're all racist. They're going to try to find him, and in fact, a hotel that the Proud Boys was at the last rally at DC has told everyone that their reservation has been canceled. Sorry, from January 4th to the 6th, they're giving their money back, and the bar that they all want to go to is being closed. So they're trying to get the race in there. They're trying to say that they're all racist. That's how they'll be painted. But in the end of the day, I don't feel like there's going to be any changes. It's going to be an exciting event when Donald Trump comes out, and the crowd will absolutely go wild. And you're right, there are untold millions of Americans that know. Even Democrats, reasonable Democrats, know it was stolen. They can only lie to themselves so long. And remember I told you that little thorn in the mind, for those that still have a soul, it's going to go in there. And maybe they don't really want a part of getting something illegally, because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a victory if you stole it for some. For others, it is. But they are constitutionalists, so even Donald Trump, I believe, will obey the law. That's kind of the way I feel about it. I wish it was something else, but it may get to another level if nothing is done. But this idea of arresting people, they all do want to arrest. Sure, there's video of these women running ballots through multiple times. I showed it in the ranting points. That's just one of many, Ben. You know that. There are dozens of videos. There are trucks rolling up in Georgia, taking out ballots to destroy the evidence that's been ordered to be subpoenaed and looked at. And the other thing is, I don't know if you saw this last week, but this guy named Pulitzer, he went and testified in front of a Georgia committee. And I gotta say this, even if you already know this, because people may not know this, but he was testifying in front of that committee. He said, my people, my hackers, have right now in this live television broadcast have hacked into a Dominion server, into a voting machine, because voting is going on right now in Georgia. And they hacked on the air right into that machine. They said, we're not only hacked into it, we can see the data, and the data is going out and the data is coming in. And they trace that data over to China on live television. And those servers aren't even supposed to be connected to the internet. So there are so many smoking guns that if it came down to a fight, people would have every reasonable reason to fight. And I mean fight in real sense, because this is about stealing the election. And if they get away with it, it will, for most of us, we believe it's going to, and you, I'm sure, know it's going to permanently change the country, because they're going to put in things in place to make sure it doesn't get unwound this time. Last time they thought they could deal around with it. This time they're going hardcore. And that goes to, you talk about your three scenarios. The legislature in New York, you may have heard my ranting points, submitted a bill to intern people who have who they determine has a communicable disease, or who may have one, or a propensity. In other words, say if you go to a Trump rally, in their estimation, you're a mayor, you are a spreader, and they have a legal right to sequester you because you're probably a spreader, because you may not have been wearing a mask. So these things are real, and there needs to be a bigger turnout in D.C. than there ever has been. But again, even if there's not a change, and like you said, I like the third scenario, and that is, we ain't going anywhere. So
you can't go anywhere, Daniel. There's nowhere for you to go. The
No.
reason why you can't go anywhere is because what you're actually hanging around for is the heritage of your nation, the values for what it was founded upon. And what's a little bit worse than that is that it's not just if you guys don't make it through. The repercussions individually for each American who doesn't make it through have got to make a decision. And that decision is, as difficult as it may be now, to know that this thing isn't going away. This thing is going to come to fisticuffs one way or the other, otherwise they'll trample you. Okay, for example, your child is going to school, they've been going regularly to school, you've been thinking it's fine. They've been teaching them occasional Bible study or whatever it may be, American history. And now they want to bring in, is it the 1719 project, the 1619 project or something, Daniel? And they want to start teaching children that no, America wasn't founded for good. It was terrible and it's a slave nation and we want to kill African Americans. So that's what they teach your children. And you say, well, I'm not really in agreement with that, but I guess, they're giving children some perspective there. I'll let that one slide. But then the following year, when the child's 8 years of age, they say we're going to start introducing transgender studies into the curriculum at school. And you say, well, hang on a second, this isn't even history. I'm not sure what you're doing here. This is a full indoctrination. And not only that, you're searing my child's mind and you're also hypersexualizing the child. You're giving them ideas about things they shouldn't have through their own discovery for at least another few years. So then Americans have got to decide, well, what do I do? So they've been pulling their children out of school and doing homeschooling. But now there's calls from elements within your country, this encroaching totalitarian tiptoe, whatever it may be, this imposition. They're saying, no, we're going to tell you what you teach your children at home because what you're teaching your children is bigoted or it's wrong.
Right.
Or you're not equipping your children with the best skills. So once again, it comes back to, well, what are you sort of fighting for? What are you trying to hold on to? You're trying to hold on to that standard, that decency, but once again, the normalcy. What America was, the way it was created. America is a product. It's a shop. It was made a certain way. And over time, it's been tinkered with and tailored with. That's all true. But certain things are standard. There's some custom features, but it's rolling down the road as one cohesive bit of equipment. At the moment, there's been so many customizations done to it from little offshoots of political parties with their own vested interests that it's now this monstrosity of something that can't really roll down the road because it's not level, it's not balanced, and it's not aligned, Daniel. There's no alignment, mate. So if you can have that alignment, if you can have some of these people understand, listen, they can be passengers, they can be dragged on the back, they can be holding on, they can be surfing on the roof of the car, it makes no difference. But the point is, that car has to keep rolling down the road the same way it's always done because that's the thing that's carrying us somewhere. And they want to smash it, Daniel.
Yeah. A famous prophetess once said, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And that's where we need to get to. Because if we don't have freedom, we're going to lose everything. Let's get to another question for Australian Ben. And by the way, those of you just joined the program, we have on our newsmaker line all the way from Australia, Australian Ben, world news analyst in his own right. And let's get to this question here from Rose. You've obviously seen Rose in many times in the live chat. How do you feel about the current Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison?
Scott Morrison, he comes under incessant and constant attacks from the left, regardless if I liked him or disliked him. Objectively, you have to be able to look at it and realise he hasn't been given a fair shot whatsoever from the progressive side of Australian politics, who are the opposition to his party, which is a conservative side. He's constantly attacked on his belief systems, on being a Christian. He's ridiculed for attending church. People think it's absurd that he takes family holidays. People tell me that our Prime Minister is a lazy bastard. He doesn't work hard enough. He's lazy. What the hell is he doing? He's always not around. He's just doing whatever. He's going to the footy or something like that. And I ask those people, I say, do you actually believe that our Prime Minister isn't up at 5:30 in the morning, every morning taking phone calls, whatever, reading documents, having staffers come at him? And do you actually believe he's not probably going to bed each night at midnight because until then he's having documents come at him? And do you still not think that maybe 3 times a week he has to take phone calls throughout the night because the international leader is giving him a call? And they say, no, he doesn't do that. He's just a lazy bastard. He's one of those church crazies. And I think to myself, those people who say that and have that opinion about Prime Minister Daniel, you can't reason with them. You can't rationalise with them. You can't find any common ground with them because they're so far gone in the hatred for what they think is an identity, a person. It's terrible. But our Prime Minister, I think, is a reasonable man. And I'll tell you why I think he's reasonable. Because he attends church. And he doesn't attend church like when Joe Biden or someone else would attend church in cameras. He's actually done it behind the scenes for 25 years. He's had a somewhat controversial professional career before entering politics. But that's true of a lot of people that get involved at the corporate level. And he was running organisations. He was the marketing director of Tourism Australia, who was responsible for producing advertisements which will beam all around the world.
You know, Ben, you just triggered a quote in my mind that it was from the Terminator, but I'm going to apply it to the Democrats because that's what we're dealing with, elected Democrats, okay? And here's the quote. They can't be reasoned with. They can't be bargained with. They don't feel pity or remorse. And they absolutely will not stop until every dissenter is dead.
Yes, and the reason why is because they're completely given over, not to God, but to a hating of God or a hating of spirituality, a hating of standard decency, morality. And that's why, Daniel. And I think at some point in the formulation of our nations, the majority of people got on board with a certain idea, and that was cool. And of course, there were fringe elements, but those fringe elements were prevented from intruding upon that inner sanctum's dialogue and then affecting what would become policy decisions, which would affect other people. Nowadays, all of the people from the fringes, especially those people in certain fringes, have deliberately set out over decades to almost in a parasitical way take over and eat the carcasses of those things and transform them into their own new creation. And that's sort of, that's not a good idea whatsoever, mate. So once again, it all comes back to, in your country, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. If Biden comes in and he just carries on the mainstream media roll with this virtual inauguration, well, from the next day, they believe he's going to start writing legislation. And he's going to start making executive orders. I would have thought Donald Trump is going to be standing right there with a sign up saying, stop, no way, no how. But therefore, you're going to have this schism. Americans, succession takes too long, Daniel. Succession takes too long. It's easier to have the conflict and get it over with. You know, you're saying
pull the Band-Aid. You're saying we need to pull the Band-Aid off. And here's the thing I've been saying. Here we've got the unbelievable, documented, in-your-face and videotaped fraud all over this country. We have the electoral college that's coming up. That's going to be a fraud. So, what do you think that Americans should do? I mean, you asked me what I thought they should do, but after this protest is over, what do you think they should do?
I don't think the protest can be over, Daniel. I thought this was a call to arms. I thought this was the last call. I thought this was the Alamo. I thought people are deadly serious about this because the mainstream media, once again, are deadly serious. The Democrat Party are deadly serious to just do this thing. Now, you know it's blatant, but then it gets to a point of, well, how did we get here? What happens now and what happens next? So how we got here, let's just throw it to George Bush Sr. He comes in, he's doing terrible things. There were some thoughts that he might have been there present when JFK had his head blown off when he was doing stuff for the Secret Service. Then he was CIA. And then he maybe helped scare Reagan and say, you're going to do what I say. And then he came in and he started Gulf War I. So that really kicked off the military-industrial complex for your nation after the Vietnam War had been brought to an end and Nixon had been gotten rid of. So George Bush Sr. is doing his thing, and then he tells people, I think in that big speech, he says, we're going to have a new world order and everything's going to be good as gold and people will just have to get on board with it. And that'll be the way it is. So then after him, you have Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton's there. He's a bit of a face. He's doing his thing. And, you know, he's smoking cigars and Monica Lewinsky's smoking him. So this happened for a long time. Hillary Clinton was there. She put up with it. She was meant to be the champion feminist. A real true feminist would have left her philandering husband at that moment. She would have said, "You're disgusting. I'm an independent woman. I can do this on my own. I'm going to run for the Senate." But she didn't. She remained. She swallowed it because she has never been anything other than Mrs. Bill Clinton. She knows they're a twosome and it's a combo effort, and that's the way it works. So you had Bill Clinton do his thing. He got removed. He said, "I didn't have sex, but you did." And then George Bush arrives, the son, the boy from Texas. He really doesn't want to be president. The guy that, flunked out of the National Guard, the guy that didn't do certain things, the guy that literally had a cocaine and alcoholism problem, the guy that had done many unsavory things, but then he found God and he said, "I'm going to run." So he ran. And then 9/11 happened, because nothing really was happening in Bush's presidency up until 9/11. It was sort of about, well,
Right.
what do we do now?
Right. He was just part of the
9/11
swamp.
happened. It gave him the reason. So how did we get here? Well, we got to George Bush at that point. Then we had 9/11, and he kicked off what his father was still doing. And the world got so tired of that. The world was so sick of all this war and atrocity going on, Daniel, and it was so blatantly obvious. And it didn't matter if you were a 9/11 truther or just an anti-war activist or someone against what was actually going on. And the lies, because the lies were told at the United Nations level about weapons of mass destruction and all this crap. So how did we get here? Then we got Obama, and Obama was the savior, the rescuer. He was the great healer. He was the man that was going to bring both parties together. He was going to end war and do all the marvelous things. People were screaming on the streets that Obama was going to pay all their bills and he was going to give them Obama phones.
The Obama phone, man.
So, but the world, Daniel, I can tell you, the world at that moment, we all took a deep sigh of relief, because the world had been such a volatile place at that point in time because of this war on terror. And what's amazing is throughout the war on terror, we really didn't have too many kidnappings and beheadings of Western journalists and all of this ISIS stuff, right?
Right.
That only came for Obama.
Right.
And then Obama had to do something, which is really weird. You're fighting a war in Iraq, and for some reason in Syria, these dudes who could go and kill Americans in Iraq decide they want to go to Syria, kidnap journalists and chop their heads off. That's pretty weak, man. ISIS aren't weak, Daniel. They're barbaric for what they do, so they're willing to bring the fight to you. So either way, Obama didn't fix anything. So how did we get here? We noticed he was corrupted just like everyone. He sold out the Democrat Party. And he was really just in cahoots with Hillary the whole time, once again. So we got Trump. How did we get here? What happens now? Trump came as a direct result of Obama, because when America voted for Obama, they voted to end racism, but Barack Obama didn't allow that to happen.
Nope.
So Donald Trump was a natural response to it, and he said preservation of borders, language, culture. Let's put the American flag front and center again. Let's stand at attention for this. Let's sing God Bless America. Let's recite the Constitution. Let's have 4th of July parties, and let's show that we are the best nation on earth. People got on board with that. And now they're saying, sorry, we thought we had you set on fire and stamped out, and a few of you are trying to get some flames going again. Well, we're going to extinguish you. What happens next, Daniel?
Well,
you tell me.
Well, it only took 25% of Americans to protest the British and set America free. The rest of the country didn't want to stir up any trouble. So there's at least 25%. And as you say, people joined Donald Trump, but really it's people who joined to the Constitution. Trump is a figurehead, but people know what the Constitution says, and they know what freedom is, and that's in our DNA. It's in the American. The true American has that in their DNA, so it's there. And I like what I mentioned the outright fraud going on, and I like the idea of pulling the Band-Aid off. That's why I don't mind if there's going to be a national conflict. If Trump finds a way to stay in office, if perhaps Mike Pence, if he would declare 5 states elections as frauds and then vote the Electoral College, and then Trump will win. And so, that's why Louis Gohmert sued Mike Pence, although that was just thrown out. He was trying to sue him to make him do that. So there's still that going out there, but I don't care if there's a conflict or not. Donald Trump has a theorem that he uses for success, and that is, when they come at me this much, I come at them that much. And we're all hoping, and I know you're hoping, and the rest of the world is hoping, that he knew this was going to happen and that he's going to come back 10 times harder than what's being arrayed against him. There does seem to be a little bit from the Democrat Party, and Joe Biden in particular and his henchmen, a little bit of reserve from celebrating the fact that they're getting ready to gain power. It's almost as if they're ready to, it's like the election. They didn't do much to get it because they knew they were going to steal it. But they're also not celebrating knowing that they're going to keep it. It's kind of weird. It's a weird vibe that I'm getting. But let me read something to you, Australian Ben, that I wrote back in May and put it up on Facebook. And what I'm going to read is my take on it was an introduction of Rod Sterling to a Twilight Zone episode. Have you ever watched Twilight Zone?
I have. I've seen it. It's great.
They always were projecting into what a future would be. And in this future, it was, I believe what I'm going to read is the intro to a movie called The Obsolete Man with Burgess Meredith, but I'm going to reframe it to today. And here goes like this. Listen to this. So this would be Rod Sterling introducing that episode. He says, "We are not in a new world. We are simply awakening in an extension of what began in the old one. Rogue governors have patterned themselves after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time. But they've added refinements, technological advancements, and a more sophisticated approach to the destruction of human freedom. But like every one of the super states that preceded them, they have one iron rule. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace. You are a citizen of the state, but you will soon have to be silenced because you're built of flesh, you have a mind, and because you believe in freedom." And that was my take on the introduction to The Obsolete Man on that Rod Serling movie. And that particular one, Burgess Meredith was brought before the state, who declared that there is no God and made it the official state thing. A lot of those shows were prophetic. All right, let's get to more questions for you, Ben. From Chuck Bam, and I guess it's to me. He says, "If they lose Georgia, will they need to fight for Trump?" I'm throwing that over to you. There's a lot of stuff going on in Georgia, and I got some friends in Georgia, and they can't believe what's going on. It's like there's a momentum that is seems to be out of control of the population. There seems to be some controllers that are manipulating everything. So I guess, Ben, is Georgia itself, do you think there's enough people in Georgia to resist the system? Now, I do know that the Republicans have got 8,000 volunteers to watch the poll workers, but hey, you don't need to watch them when you already got 2 million mail-in ballots in the back of Stacey Abrams' trunk.
What's amazing about that, is it true that Stacey Abrams' sister was the judge, and was the judge that said, this is inadmissible, we're not following this custody of evidence whatsoever, I'm shutting it down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, there's an update on that. She's reversed herself, and really, because we're only talking about 4,000 votes, and so she doesn't need to tip her hand that she's a rabid, foaming at the mouth, insaniac, freaking Democrat. She doesn't need to do that in this particular case. So she's taken the high road and reversed her own thing. But she already played her hand. She's a partisan hack. She should be thrown out. But those people are in for life, and that ain't going to happen.
Okay, so the great state of Georgia, Daniel. Whenever I hear that name, that's a name that sort of resonates around the world. There's thousands of girls in Australia that are named Georgia.
Wow.
There's the fantastic song. What's that song? Georgia.
Yeah, I was singing that.
So if you could sing that for us, or at least a couple of bars, that'd be awesome, Daniel. But the point is, Georgia is a soulful place, right? Is Georgia like New Orleans?
Yeah, there's a lot of soul down in Georgia, man, and races get along well there. I don't understand. Atlanta is a middle-class mecca of minorities. I mean, they're all doing well there. I don't get it. Why do they want to destroy what they've got and what they've built?
The only thing I could think of because, admittedly, I haven't studied a lot of what happens in Georgia. I normally look at America more with an overall scope. But do they wish to transform Georgia, the people's minds and understanding, from maybe being 50-50 split between some true Constitution believing Americans, some proud African American flag waving Americans, some barbecuing African Americans,
right on.
And do they want to replace that with the type of urban inner city mindset of African Americans, like what you have in Detroit? Do they want to transform Georgia into such a Democrat stronghold to give the people no hope whatsoever? Because it appears to me that what the Democrats prefer to do is they prefer to take over an area, region, a city, a county, implement all of their people, all of their policies. They promise everything but really can deliver nothing. They raise everyone's taxes, property values go down, crime goes up, the good people move out. It's not always white flight. In lots of cases, it's black flight, it's Latino flight. It's good people and families with values wanting to get away. And the Democrats then ruin that community. And instead of demolishing the community and starting again, they say, hey, we'll replicate what we tried to do here over in this region. And let's get it there because it'll work this time. Then when it fails there, they move to the next. And before you know, you've got this whole vast area which is just given over to this desperate scenario. And to me, looking at America being the richest nation on earth and having the best technology and the most resolute people, and a real backbone of hard work and innovation and ingenuity, when I see that, to me it's so alien, Daniel. It doesn't make sense because America's always Beverly Hills to the rest of the world. The ghetto's a place, but it's only on one corner. It's not a whole community. But I realize that the Democrats, actually, they do that. They hollow out entire communities. So is that what they wish to do to Georgia? Do they want to get everyone sucking on the government teat, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, I hope not. I always thought that Georgia was a God-fearing, gun-toting, Bible-believing, go to church on Sunday, work hard Monday through Friday kind of place, and it surprises me, but there's that faction that's not, and they want all to run all that. And then, it takes years for race relations to get going in this country. And so, the city has certainly put a lot of African Americans in charge. They're in charge of the mayorship, the police. I mean, they're in charge. Why would they want to, the end result of this? Surely, I think, some of the minorities must understand what's going to happen to their community. All they got to do is look at Portland or look at Chicago, where there's just a gun battle. Every night is going to be a running gun battle over there. Atlanta is a great city. It's one of the, it's got a great airport. And, I don't understand that. But right now, the world is focused on Georgia because even that's almost greater than what's going to happen January 6th. And I hope everybody who has a chance to go to the rally in D.C. goes. I can't go, but maybe soon I can. Maybe the next one I'll be able to. But so I'm just hoping that they will. But I got a question. It has nothing to do with nothing. But okay, I got to ask you something. Man to man here. Okay. This morning, my beautiful wife Susan beat me at Uno. Now.
Beat you at what?
At Uno. It's a game.
Yeah.
She beat me at it, okay? And my beautiful wife, Susan. Do you got any Aussie tips how next time I play her that I can win? You got any Aussie tips?
The trick is not to win, Daniel. The trick is to let her win. It's happy days. You don't need to win that card game. What are you talking about, man? Let her win. Let her walk off into the day thinking she's got one up on you. That's fine, mate. There's only one guy that's able to extract the honey from those bees and bring it inside and feed it to your dear wife, Daniel. You should know where your bread is buttered. There's nothing wrong with you choosing what pants you're going to wear every day. Your wife's just going to tell you what color you're wearing, Daniel. There's a bit of compromise there for yourself, mate. Good luck.
Okay.
See how you go.
Good advice. You didn't see that one coming. All right. Let's get to this question here then. Switching gears. This from Missouri. Do you have opinion on the multiple elected officials possibly having incriminating photographical evidence of child abuse crimes? They're saying somebody came out today saying that there's people that have the goods on John Roberts before he was even in the Supreme Court. Of course, his name popped up on the flight log going to Pedo Island with Jeffrey Epstein, which some people say he's not dead. That's how I dig that. But do you think all of our Supreme Courts does it look like they're compromised?
No, it's a horrifying thought to think that they are, but it's almost a sober thought to realize, well, of course there would have to be some level of control there. Daniel, not everyone who does these horrific things to children are just a lazy fat slob in his mother's basement or whatever it is, this pedo guy. Some of the most prevalent child sex abusers are very, very public. They're the head of pediatrics wards in hospitals.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're prominent principals at prestigious schools. They're Jerry Sandusky, was that his name? They're coaches at the highest level. They are the doctor of the United States female Olympic gymnastics team. That gentleman, I can't remember, was his name Nader or something? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, it was Nader. Mm-hmm.
And you're talking hundreds and hundreds. So if you're talking about is the Supreme Court also likely to be corrupted in the same way, I think that any institution is most likely corrupted in the same way, not in every person, of course, but in plenty of people that make the decisions. And then if the people who are making decisions aren't participating in that, disgusting behaviour, well, they're moved on after a couple of years. They don't have to close the door on them straight away. There's just a new opportunity that presents themselves somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There were orphanages that were made for years, and they were run by certain churches. And this isn't an attack on churches, but it's an attack on satanic people that deliberately became priests in their life, deliberately entered the church knowing it would give them cover and access to children. And then they used that cover, they used the church, and they used the power and authority of the church to do the most terrible things to those children. Mm-hmm. And they ruined those children.
And it's not just
archdiocese.
It's not just the Catholic priests anymore now, man. It's the Boy Scouts. They're paying out big fines and stuff. So it's a freak show. Hey, somebody wants to know, have you ever visited America?
Not yet, Daniel. Not yet. I've read plenty about America. I feel like I live in America, even though I live here. But
hey,
I will get there. I would have been there sort of 12 months ago, but this all happened. There's been a couple of times I've had the opportunity to come. Well, there's been half a dozen times. And tell you the truth, I was just like, do I want to hop on a plane for 22 hours? And unless I was flying comfortably, mm-hmm. I didn't think it was mm-hmm. worth it. And there were other opportunities here in Australia. Mm-hmm. But when I come to America, I've got, a few plans. I want to drive pretty much across America, Daniel. I want to go to the big auto shows and watch the Formula One Grand Prix and go to Laguna Seca, watch MotoGP, see a couple of rock concerts. Stop on by Indianapolis and we'll go get some barbecue wings or something, Daniel. Who knows? Even buffalo wings, mate.
Yeah, I know where some good barbecue is, and I know one place is not, and that's called Famous Dave's. There's definitely not good barbecue there, but a place called City Barbecue. Let me ask you something though. You got an awesome view. Is that the ocean there that you live on?
That's the Broadwater. It's separated by a tiny island, I guess, from the ocean, mm-hmm. which is on the other side.
Do you have a boat?
There's a little boat, Daniel. It's just for fun. I prefer jet ski, mate. I've got some mates who've got big boats, and they go out and they'll go for a weekend. They'll go on a 500-mile round trip out on the open ocean and go marlin fishing and do it all.
Ooh, look at that, man! Is that water cold?
I'm sorry?
Is the water cold?
No, right now, like this morning, I was out there. The footage I sent you, I put up a YouTube video yesterday. I think I called it New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I saw it
on the Gold Coast,
mm-hmm.
and So that's 28 degrees outside, which is, I think, is about maybe 90, 95 over there. So it's nice and warm, but there's a westerly wind blowing off the ocean, so it's not scorching hot. And the water, Daniel, it's a lukewarm until you go out into probably over about 10 foot deep. But it's just nice, mate. All the ocean washes in from the outside and fills and replenishes our Broadwater every day. So depending on the tides,
I saw so many jet skis there, man. I thought they were going to wreck into a big boat somewhere.
You know, it's quite interesting. In Australia, you're meant to have a license to ride one of those jet skis, and in Australia, young boys aren't meant to be operating powered watercraft. And in Australia, you're definitely not meant to be doing some of the things they're doing. But in Australia, there's also a culture of going fast and enjoying yourself and shaking off any hassles. So it's a playground, Daniel. Good on.
All right, Australian Ben. This question is from Peter from Australia. It says, Ben, what do you think about the fact that they are building a podium for the inauguration, even though Biden said he would be virtual? Is that podium for Trump? Is he that confident of victory?
I don't care if he's confident. I don't care if the podium's for Trump or not. I don't care if Biden wants to have his virtual thing. Let him have it. All I care about is Donald Trump having the exact same inauguration at the exact same podium in the exact same location that he had 4 years ago. And if Biden and Democrats don't want to be there, that's all good. The Secret Service can't stop Donald Trump marching on there and setting up his podium and draping over the red, white, and blue and having some of the army there standing behind him and having the trumpets blow and doing his thing. Like, are you kidding me, Daniel? In my understanding, that's what should happen. Donald Trump just is president, so he does what the president would do. I believe Joe Biden deliberately not wanting to go there and wanting to be indoors and do it under the cover of the virtue, that's because he knows he'd face a reckoning. And this is going to be a lot louder. That would be a heck of a lot louder than any type of opposition to George Bush when he was president. I do recall on that day, it might have been a rainy day, but there was a fair bit of yelling and screaming on George Bush Jr. when he ran for president after what had happened with Al Gore.
Well,
mate, Donald Trump ain't leaving, Daniel. You have to believe it. I have to believe it. It seems like the only reasonable thing, because to believe anything other than that confirms that, yes, indeed, all countries have fallen and all countries have had their elections corrupted. Some countries never can reverse that, or most countries don't reverse it. They then become despotic states. We always thought that the United States would not become that country. We always thought there were precautions in place to prevent that from happening. And we never thought that they would be so obtuse to do it so blatantly and give everyone the middle finger and say, we don't care, we're taking this, and you can shut up and go away, you deplorables. But that's the situation where you're now at. I would just say, you mentioned the poem earlier on from Twilight Zone. And was that from the episode that was called The Librarian, Daniel?
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I think I said Obsolete Man. I think that was another one. That's where he got blown up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there was one with the librarian, and they said that the librarian is also obsolete because he teaches things with books, and how dare he make people think things?
Yeah, no, I think that's it.
There is no God.
That's it. No, that was the Obsolete Man, but yeah, that's the same one. Yeah, and right, they said we banned books a long time ago. They were lecturing him, and they said you're probably one that thinks that we should have not banned libraries. You know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, when you were saying that, it reminded me of a speech. I'm not sure if the movie is called The Dictator, but it's a famous clip. It was on YouTube. It's been up for a good decade, I guess. It's a Charlie Chaplin clip, and he's sort of almost dressed in SS regalia, and he's standing up before a crowd, and he gives an impassioned speech to them. And what he says in that speech, or one aspect of it that I think it should really resonate with some of your people, the people in Georgia, the people that are, what do we do now? We're facing this crisis on our hands, where there's actually a coup taking place. On its face, it's a real legitimate thing, and the media apparatus is being used as a propaganda arm of this deep state coup. So Charlie Chaplin gets up before the crowd, Daniel, and he says, soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. men who despise you, who enslave you, who terminate your rights, who drill you, who diet you, tell you what to do, what to think, how to feel, what to be.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men
Mm.
because they're machine men and they've got machine minds and machine hearts.
Wow.
And he tells the people, don't give yourselves to these men because you're not machines, you're not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. Fight for liberty, fight for truth, fight for justice. Don't fight for these unnatural men. Don't give yourselves over to them.
Wow.
Daniel, no one wants to fight the war. No one wants to fight the war.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because the people that the war is being waged against are the reasonable people, are the decent people, are the people that at the very last resort want to inflict violence on other people.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets to the point like this, Daniel. If they're encroaching in all those ways, I already told you they're bringing in certain curriculums for the children, they're teaching them different things,
Mm-hmm.
then you're now homeschooling them. What about when they come to the door and say you can't teach your child this?
Mm-hmm.
And what about when they come to the door and say forced vaccination?
Mm-hmm.
What point does the war have to be fought on an individual level before everyone becomes complacent? And before you know about it, people are hopping on trains because we're group thinking individuals, we're tribal, and we go along with the crowd before we're hopping on trains, and who knows what happens next.
There was a back in the Revolutionary War against the British, things were not looking good for the Continental Army. December 31st, 1776, Washington addressed his soldiers and he needed them to re-enlist. And this is what he said, but I'm going to read it. But this is what the echoes from the past from George Washington, one of the greatest men that ever lived, father of our country. I think it needs to be applied for today. And here it is. My brave fellows, you have done all that I've asked you to do and more than can be reasonably expected. But your country is at stake, your wives, your houses, and all that you hold dear. You have worn yourselves out with fatigues and hardships, but we know not how to spare you. If you will but consent to stay 1 month longer, you will render that service to the cause of liberty and to your country, which you probably can never do under any other circumstances. And that motivational speech right there got him to re-enlist. But it basically is saying you've went through hardships, you've done everything you're supposed to do. Apply that to American citizens. We've been through COVID. We've been through years of torment from Democrats trying to destroy our country, sexualize our youth, pervert the minds of people, give our country control, sovereign authorities to other people, being under control of the UN, give away our wealth, make lopsided trade deals. We've been through all that, and we've been fighting the nonsense of the Democrats nonstop. But as I said earlier from that Terminator quote, they will never stop. They will never give in, ever. I mean, the emphasis is on ever. They don't stop. We can't stop. This side can't stop. And Washington is calling us to resist. I was going to say a call to arms, but I'll say for this broadcast, I'll say to resist what's coming, because it says you probably will not be able to do it any other time. If that deal is sealed with this steel, then it was probably not be able to be undone.
I don't see they're ever going to undo it, Daniel. The reason why they're so hell-bent and so obvious in them doing what they're doing is because they don't care. It's hell for broke, mate. They're giving it full steam, and they think they can trample over anyone. I think it might have been a week ago in your nation, Daniel. There was an infamous White House meeting where Donald Trump was in the Oval Office, and there were 3 lawyers there, and General Flynn was there, and a few other people were there. And there came a point in that meeting where General Flynn had to stand up and say to the lawyers in particular, and a few other SES, Special Executive Service people that were in there, do you believe that the president won the election? And there was a very heated discussion going on up until that point of General Flynn standing up and putting that bold and blunt question to these people who were meant to be there for Donald Trump, who were meant to be the good guys with his back. And the reports from that meeting from the former CEO of Overstock, Mr. Patrick Byrne. He's a famous libertarian in America. He's close with President Trump. Donald Trump occasionally sought his advice on matters because Mr. Byrne is on record saying he's never voted for Donald Trump because he's a libertarian. He votes libertarian. But Donald Trump trusts him because he'll tell him the truth even if he disagrees. So Mr. Byrne confirmed that not only did General Flynn ask the question, that all of the deep state operatives in that room and Donald Trump's own lawyers, apart from Sidney Powell, mind you, and Giuliani and those people weren't in the room or in the Oval Office, those lawyers, they would not attest to the fact that Donald Trump, the man they're meant to be representing in this battle to stay president, they believed that he didn't win. Or they weren't willing to say it. They thought, there could be a contest here. More importantly, they were trying to not necessarily insist, they were trying to encourage that the president vacates. Just does the right thing. We'll worry about it in 4 years. And once again, Daniel, 4 years can't happen because there's no way they'll let him back in. They wish to prosecute him. And Trump Tower is going to have the name taken off it. Or maybe security bomb sniffing patrols won't be allowed to be there one day because it'll be full Democrat run. And they're going to bring down all of Trump's buildings. If they're bringing down statues now of guys from 200 years ago, you best be assured that at some stage they're going to try to reduce to ashes and reduce to piles of rubble Donald Trump's buildings in America. I can see Antifa trying to storm Mar-a-Lago just like the gangsters do in the final scene of Scarface against Al Pacino.
Yeah, all they got to do is say Trump represents hate. And there's a law against hate speech, and so therefore that name can't be seen. You're absolutely right. These impossible things to believe are now possible and plausible and more than likely.
So this is why we need the deep state arrests. This is why, regardless of what happens with Joe Biden's virtual inauguration, Donald Trump needs to proceed as normal. He needs to just continue on, carry on. He needs to stand there regardless. He's not afraid of crowds. He gets out there. The MAGA rally has to go ahead on the 6th. I have heard, maybe you can confirm it, I've seen some reports that the mayor of DC tried to ban people from utilising accommodation in DC because she thought that by facilitating accommodation for these hundreds of thousands of MAGA caravans and convoys that are coming in.
Yeah, no, she did.
She doesn't want them there.
No, she doesn't. She's trying to ban them. I said that earlier, that they're trying to close the gas stations and hotels and make it almost impossible for anybody to come in there. And like I say, but if you're an Antifa and you're going to firebomb the White House, they'll put porta potties out there. But if you're going to protest illegal activity, then they're going to try to prevent you. This is the kind of sick world we're living in over here, Ben.
Okay, so some information that I heard was that Antifa had been tweeting out that they are going to try to embed themselves in the MAGA groups. These were tweets through some Antifa private groups that talked about they were from Portland and there were other ones from different regions, and they said they were going to be coming there, embedding themselves in the MAGA crowd, and they'll be wearing MAGA hats, but they'll be turned around reversed, and they'd be wearing camo shorts, and they would be trying to set off incendiary devices within the crowd and walk away. A lot of the time it would just be small little firecrackers, but then at other times it'll be something much larger with the potential to start taking people off at the knees. But the crowd, if it's so large, won't be able to differentiate that. And then there's also, Daniel, I'm not sure if you're fully aware of this, but there's things that aren't reported in the news every day because these things are so terrible that they don't want to incite further people to repeat the behaviours. One of them is suicide, and everyone knows about jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, etc. There's always people that repeat the following day, or what used to happen at the Empire State Building. But for about 5.5 weeks, there's been some word there have been covert teams, most of them really not 100% crazy snipers, but different versions of Antifa and BAM by any means necessary types of people. And they've been taking pot shots at the White House from distance for many weeks now. And bullets have been arriving in the White House through different times, and maybe a pillar is struck, etc. because of the triangulation of these shots happening, they know it's coordinated, but they also know there's obviously teams out there in cars, and they're just trying to intimidate the people in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been written about in some of these reports that I read is that Donald Trump and some of the Patriots, etc., have actually brought in special operator teams, and they've been doing circulation patrols every evening, and they've been catching lots of these Antifa members or whoever they may be,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not reported whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
These people have to disappear and have to be interrogated, and they have to find out what else is happening. This isn't like the ones that ride in the streets of Portland and then get re-released again after damaging property. It's at a different scale. So I would hope that they're able to catch all of those people, because once again, Daniel, they've openly commented they're at war with MAGA, or with the version of America that you live in, and they wish to overthrow it, and they're willing to do anything, and they want a rebellion. I'm glad you guys carry more 357s on your hips than those guys. I'm glad those guys can't really fight. The majority of UFC fighters are all MAGA type of individuals. But
there's the line. Time. There's the line that most Americans that have guns are not going to let be crossed, and they will come for the guns. We all know that. So if it doesn't, if they attempt to, and you're right about trying to arrest President Trump and erase his memory. That's the thing. And I'm sure all the textbooks will say he was illegitimate to begin with. So anything that happened to him after that is what should happen. But like every civilization that's taken over by another one, first thing you want to do is erase the history of the previous administration or previous civilization. It's the first thing they want to do, and erase the history books or change them. So, yeah, I think if they do try to arrest, and Trump must know that they're going to arrest him. I mean, that's all there is to it. They hate him so much, and they have been saying in various venues, just like little pop outs here and there, saying we're coming for you, MAGA. You can just see various people have said that we're coming for you. We're going to make you pay for what you did. So there's a vindictiveness to this crowd, but I have to believe, Australian Ben, that like the Germans and like many people before have discounted America as they thought, like for instance, Pearl Harbor, they thought America was so weak and so docile that they would never respond. Then and so through history, the world criminal elements have underestimated America's will and their fortitude. I think they're underestimating again, and they haven't seen the wrath of the American people. And I think there probably will be a trigger event where that American DNA will rise to the occasion. And so I look at things positively that way. No matter who's in the White House, we're not going anywhere. Brother Ben, we're at the end of our broadcast. Anything you'd like to say to finish this thing out?
I'd just like to say thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me on the program, mate. God bless you, and God bless everyone there. I wish you well. I hope that things turn out a certain way. The three ways, once again, either Donald Trump needs to arrest everyone, whatever is Q, whatever is anonymous, whatever, all of these white hat patriots, whatever, taking these people to Guantanamo, whatever these treason and sedition charges are, that needs to happen. And as wild as that sounds, the reason why it needs to happen is because if it does not happen, the Democrat side are going to try to do something similar, but more importantly, they will actually start implementing it, and they will do terrible things to approximately half of the American population. And then the third thing is that, I guess, confirms why Donald Trump needs to do those things, and that's to prevent the second thing happening. God bless you, man. Like, it's going to be a wild show. But, I'm pretty positive, Daniel, because Rambo always wins. Commando wins. The Terminator wins. Rocky wins. John McClane wins. John Wayne wins. And the fastest car in town is always going to be that car from the Dukes of Hazzard. So, right on. Good on you, man. Thank you, Daniel. All the best. Bye-bye now.
All right. Thanks, Australian Ben. Can we have you on the show again sometime?
Yeah, of course. We forgot to talk about super soldiers. We forgot to talk about nanobots. We forgot to talk about clones. We forgot to talk about the weapon of indignation from Russia.
That sounds
But
like another
there's time for
show.
that.
That sounds like another show right there.
Thanks, Daniel. All the best. Bye
All
bye
right.
now.
All right. Bye bye. All right, everybody. That was.